the world, essentially. And I continued talking to this friend of mine who met me on campus, and through a lot of these conversations about all of these things that I wanted to talk about, she just kept pointing me to the gospel, and eventually it just broke down to, I need to let go of all of these things that I'm starting with, because I was starting from the position that God didn't exist. And so adding anything to that, if it sort of contradicted any of my previous premises, clearly something new had to be wrong. But I was unwilling to accept that God could exist. And so, I was reading things on, there was an article by Horatius Bonar about letting go and falling into the hands of God that was instrumental. I was reading about the Lord's work in people in Africa who had never heard the gospel, and He's saving these people. I was hearing about all of these amazing works that the Lord has done, all the while thinking that, okay, even if the Lord is real, then I must be reprobate. Because He didn't care. I said that He didn't exist. I didn't believe. And nothing had happened to me. So clearly He just wasn't paying attention and wasn't going to do anything for me. But through reading the scriptures, through talking with this girl, through eventually just hearing her say, just need to believe. You can do all of these things. You can try to figure out your own way, your way to salvation, but essentially what you need to do is just believe. You don't need to work yourself up. You can't work yourself up to a perfect righteousness because I've already sinned. You can't work your way to being heard by God because you've already sinned. You've already fallen short. And, it suddenly started to make sense. Yeah, okay, if all of this is true, what she's telling me, it's consistent with what the Bible is saying. So I was sitting in my basement at the time, and I just decided, okay, well, I'll pray. I'll start just talking to the Lord and asking. I didn't know who I was talking to at first, but I started just talking. And the first few times, it didn't really seem like anything was happening. Nothing was really going on. But I had told her that I had prayed. And she said, well, do it again. And keep calling out. And keep knocking because the door will be opened. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But she just said, keep praying. And so I did. I prayed over and over again. And eventually, it started to seem like something else was happening. I was no longer talking to my ceiling. I wasn't having my voice bounce off of walls. I was being heard. Someone was listening. Someone was understanding. And I was able to just pour out all of these things that had been going on. My animosity towards the idea of God because nothing happened to me when I was trying to prove that He existed, or didn't exist, as things may be. Nothing had happened. So clearly He wasn't there. I was really angry with Him, but who was I angry with? I just kept asking Him, if I could be saved, please let me know. And I started okay, I'll test it. I'll believe. I will believe just to see if anything can happen. And so I tried to really clear out and scientifically test it, get away all of the other variables and just say, okay, the one variable that needs to be changed is I need to believe. So I started acting like I believed, and I prayed like I believed. And it wasn't like a play acting type thing. It was really putting myself in the position to believe. And the more I did that, the Lord provided a few crumbs, but enough for me to go, this is more than anything that I could have thought of. And my faith just grew by leaps and bounds in those few days until the point where I really, I believed that I believed, but I didn't really believe. It was about a week-long period where I sort of believed that I believed. I was going through these things. And one day I work night stock, so I stock shelves all night, and I was driving home one day, and I was stopped at a stop sign. The sun was coming up in the morning, and there was these clouds in the sky, and the sky was really orange and all of these things, and it was just sort of a normal day, normal sunrise for the most part. But I was thinking on the things of God, thinking about Christ, and suddenly, I couldn't have told you at the time, but John 3:16 suddenly became real and became about me. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Well, that became, for God so loved Michael, that He gave His only begotten Son, that if I were to believe on Him, I would not perish, but would have eternal life. And so that hit me as real, not just as an idea like I've read it, but it hit me as a reality. And I'm looking at this sunrise, and suddenly it pops. It becomes this Van Gogh painting, and all of these rivets in the paint start to become more real. And as this happens, I start to realize my sin. If Christ is real, if Christ has died for me, how wretched am I? What have I done to deserve this? There is nothing that I could possibly do that could bring me to him, and yet he still has died. If he is real, and I am real, I mean, truth with a capital T started to come in. If he is real, if he has died, and I am this wretched, what can I possibly do? What can really be real? And suddenly it all started to pour on me. I just started to get huge conviction, like, what could I possibly have been doing with my entire life that I could put such just insult to the creator of the universe? And the reality of Christ, the reality of my sin, the brevity of life, all of that, the beauty of all of creation that was testifying to God, all of it hit me at once. And there are so many people that have so many different testimonies in that regard when all of that happens in stages, but all of that hit me at once like a brick in the head. And I just started, I broke down at my sin, and I was laughing at Christ, and just overjoyed that Christ was a reality, but I was weeping at the same time that I had sinned against him. I was crying and weeping and laughing and doing all of these things, this huge mess of emotion on my drive home for the rest of the time. And I just started, when I got home, I was calling out to the Lord, thanking him for Jesus Christ, and just tables and chairs. Suddenly I wasn't doubting their existence anymore. I was just so overjoyed that there was something outside of myself, some bedrock